All right. Well, thank you, everyone, and welcome to the fourth edition of our Frontline Fridays series. Today, we're going to do optimizing operational efficiency, or how to do more with less. My name is Kensington Schmidt, and I am joined by my colleagues today, Andrew Friedman and Navjot. Without further ado, let's get started. So first of all, if you aren't aware, this is the fourth edition of this series. And if you'd like more information about our Frontline Fridays series, please visit aka.ms/Frontline Fridays. You can also see the blog and the link here for you to be able to see more information about this series. But what we're trying to accomplish here is really to provide clarity by understanding the Microsoft suite of tools for frontline workers, everything from identity all the way to AI and everything in between. We're defining some key use cases to address common customer challenges and questions on how to solve them. And we're here to share some resources with you, some useful links on how to launch, how to get end user adoption and support for your various employees. So what we've done as part of this session is we have already gone through identity and best practices around device management. We've gone through the adoption and change management, the people side of the equation, as well as the corporate communications and operational communication side of things. And so now we are moving on to the rest of operations. And with that, that means task management, as well as team shifts and scheduling. And then finally, we'll walk through some key takeaways. For those of you who have attended our previous series, I want to remind you that we have been walking through a sample customer, a made-up customer. This is our Contoso, only Woodgrove this time around. Woodgrove Grocery Store is about 1,500 stores. They've got 30,000 store employees and about 10,000 store support or corporate information workers. Their current tools and systems are Workday for human resources. They've got UKG for their main workforce management solution, ADP for payroll, SAP for inventory, and ServiceNow for IT tickets and help desk. And while our sample customer here today is, of course, a grocery store chain, I hope you will see yourselves in the examples that we highlight here today. Please feel free to ask any questions, both either in the chat or if you want to guarantee that it's seen and heard in the Q&A feature that you see inside of Teams. We will be taking questions at the end for about half an hour. So feel free to pre-queue up some of those questions or raise your hand when we get there, and we'll make sure that it is well addressed. I'll also be monitoring kind of the Q&A session while my colleagues are doing most of the presentation here for you. And so Woodgrove Grocery, this is their overview, but they've got, some challenges that I hope you see are fairly similar to things that you've got going on. And in particular, what I want to highlight here is the stuff we've got in bold. This is what we're going to be tackling here today. In general, store audits are performed once a quarter and only once a quarter by the regional manager because it's just so time consuming and full of paper. Because most of our processes are manual and on paper, there's no digital tracking, there's no way for, store operations or leadership to have really a good handle on what is happening day to day inside of the stores. And most of the documentation that we have is either in paper binders that are sitting inside the various stores and hopefully up to date, or it's available in PDF form on a SharePoint site that can sometimes be a little bit challenging to access because it's only available on the desktop PCs in the back room. And then when it comes to scheduling and pay slips, well, I had said before that the vast majority was using UKG and the UKG app. We actually recently acquired 200 stores that had been using just pen and paper and some Excel to do their scheduling. And so we're going to walk through our lightweight shift management solution that's included inside of our frontline solution here today. That's a great example of how to get started really quickly with our solution and how to integrate it with a broader solution like UKG. So without further ado, let's take a look not just at the current challenges, but what are we actually trying to achieve with all of this? It's not always about the switches and the bytes and the bits and the technology. The kind of overall operating objective here is to reduce noise, to simplify, whether that's with simplified processes, a consistent user experience, making sure that we get more value from existing devices that we already have access to, and even safely allow personal mobile devices in our environment. And so that we can overall pull down the security risk that we have across our frontline portfolio and across our stores, and overall reduce help desk calls and therefore costs. This is a great way to make everybody happy in this process. So, without further ado, that's again a quick recap of where we are with Woodgrove, and I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Andrew, who's going to kick us off with task management.
Thank you, Kensington. Let's jump into the task management for frontline organizations. We'll start off with a question on who needs frontline management and why, and what problems we're setting out to solve. One of the things that we see across many different organizations is that without the right tools, employees in several different roles are struggling across the organization, from the top floor to the shop floor, as we sometimes say. In central offices, the regional leaders have a difficult time getting the information about what needs to be done to all of the right locations and all of the right people at each location that needs to complete the work. And often they're using manual methods that are difficult to know whether that information got to the right people and difficult to track whether that work actually got completed. Similarly, the frontline managers are often a bottleneck, and they may find it difficult to collate all the necessary information if that's coming in disparate sources, like several different emails or also messages. But they also are often finding it difficult to get that information to their frontline workforce. And that translates also to difficulty for those frontline workers. In the example of Woodgrove Grocery, those more junior store employees who may finish a task or finish helping a customer and then have some time available, but without the right systems in place, they don't know what's available for them to work on, and they have to chase down a manager in order to get that information. Further placing a burden on frontline managers and emphasizing the bottleneck that they can sometimes unwittingly be. And so, what does a helpful solution do to address these problems? Well, it helps the organization and central offices more clearly distribute and manage the frontline tasks at scale so that they can provide clarity and visibility across their store locations in the case of Woodgrove. And for frontline managers, it provides a single source of truth, not only where they can see in one place what's expected of them and their team, but where they can also delegate more easily to their frontline employees, those store associates that work as part of their team. And along those lines, those store associates, those frontline workers at each location, then finally have their own access to see what they're responsible for and what work needs to be done across their team so that they can pick up work proactively and help without having to go chase down a manager to see what they need to do. And so that's an overview of the problems that we see across many organizations that have frontline workers and the ways in which we hope to solve them. And next, we'll talk about how does that actually work within Microsoft Teams. We have a product called Planner that is an app in Microsoft Teams, and Planner has several different capabilities that are meant to help address those challenges in the ways that I just described. And so one of the key features is task publishing. Task publishing is a tool that we'll soon see a demo of, and it allows central offices to go in and create a list of tasks. And then once they've defined a set of work, they can choose the set of locations that should be receiving those tasks and then publish the list of tasks to each of those locations. Then each of those locations will receive a copy of the tasks and they can act against them and assign them across their frontline employee workforce. And then meanwhile, the central office teams back in headquarters have the ability to see how that work is going. And so they can track the status of that work as it gets executed by each of those frontline teams. Task publishing is a great tool for a set of work that needs to be done at roughly the same time across many locations. But we also know that there are many business processes that are done at more individualized times across locations. So for example, maintenance schedule is something that every location likely needs to do, If they have certain equipment like refrigerators or coffee machines, uh, those require maintenance and from time to time repairs. And those might happen on differing schedules across locations. One location might have acquired their equipment at a different time than another location, and therefore might have an offset in the timing. And so that's a great situation for something like task automation, which is possible thanks to the extensibility capabilities in Planner, which allow you to create, update, and retrieve tasks programmatically. Task automation combined with task publishing are great tools available to headquarters and central offices for creating and managing tasks across the set of frontline locations. But we do also have ad hoc creation available to folks in the frontline. We typically hear frontline managers or frontline workers who, in addition to what is asked of them by central offices, spot things that need attention. For example, a frontline manager or frontline worker in a Woodgrove retail location may spot that some of the signage has been damaged, and they may create a task so that someone on their team can print another version of the display and affix that and get that looking up to the proper quality standards. And so, with the ability to create tasks ad hoc by frontline managers and frontline workers, and the ability to create tasks centrally using task automation and task publishing, organizations have the ability to create the set of tasks that are needed so everyone has a complete picture of what needs to be done in their location. Let's take a look at how that might apply across a couple other industries beyond the Woodgrove retail organization that we've talked about so far. We've got some examples around customer service, cleaning and maintenance, equipment operation, employee and customer safety risk, inventory management, and also emergency response. And when organizations don't have the right tools in place, this can create challenges. If folks don't know all of the work that needs to happen, that can result in customer service delays. It can also result in regulatory non-compliance, which increases legal risk. It can lead to equipment breakdowns, which can reduce productivity and output. It can also reduce customer satisfaction. Similarly, not following the proper standard operating procedures because those aren't clear or that information is not available can dramatically increase safety risk for both customers and employees. It can result in inventory mismatches where the system and what's actually on the shelves in the store or in the warehouse are mismatched. And finally, in all these ways and more, the inability to understand what needs to be done or the standard procedure for doing that and the steps to follow can result in lower productivity and profit for the organization as a whole. And so these are some of the many reasons we see organizations looking to digitize and strengthen their task management for their frontline workforce. Now let's take a look at the capabilities available in Planner for frontline organizations. Planner includes a couple different capabilities. First is the out-of-the-box experience known as task publishing that, again, we'll see a demo of quite soon. In addition, Power Automate supports Planner triggers and connectors so that you can elevate your existing capabilities with some low-code automation. And finally, Planner supports application permission APIs for more pro-code automation and integration, including AI integration. One common use case of the application permission APIs that we'll see later on is reporting. And in case the term application permission is not familiar to you, the application permission indicates that these APIs can be called as an app. So the application can be granted permissions by your IT admin in your organization, and it can access tasks across the entire organization and create tasks for the appropriate teams across the organization, rather than being subject to the permissions of an individual user who would need to be part of a particular Teams team or Office 365 group or Planner plan in order to see those tasks or act on those tasks or create additional tasks in that location. And so the application permission APIs are especially powerful for things like reporting where a broad view across different teams and plans is desired. Now, let's take a look at task publishing and what that can offer your organization and how it works. We're starting in the central offices of this organization, where an individual with the right permissions has access to this publishing experience and can create tasks that they are planning to send to their frontline location. We'll take a look at a product recall task where this urgent item needs to be sent across the organization. The publishing user in the central offices can use the notes field and rich text formatting to draw attention to the most important information at a glance, and can also add an attachment to make sure that the visual information required is there. They can add checklist items and can also apply a completion requirement for the checklist, meaning that no one on the frontline team can mark that task complete until each of the checklist items have been marked complete. Similarly, in this case, they've also added an approval requirement. That's going to require that someone in the frontline team review the work and approve that that work has been done correctly before the task can be marked complete. So that's a little bit about how it looks for the central offices folks creating that and sending that out. On the right-hand side, we can now see what that looks like for the frontline worker, that Woodgrove store employee who is receiving the task, or the store manager. They'll start in their home screen or anywhere else that they can see their assigned tasks, and here they'll see that they have an urgent task due. When they open that experience, they can jump directly into that task, and they'll see the title at the top. They'll also see that asterisk at the left-hand side, which indicates that there are completion requirements and the task cannot be completed until they complete those requirements. If they forget and try to mark that complete, they'll see a note reminding them that there's more they need to do. And when they scroll down and see the notes, they'll also see the checklist item, which is marked required, and the approval request, which is also required and is currently pending. Once they've completed the appropriate set of work, they can mark those checklist items complete, and that required badge will turn to a green check mark. They can do a similar thing for the approval request, and only once that task has had all completion requirements satisfied can the task be marked complete. Let's take another look at a different type of task. In this case, we'll look at a store walk task. The store walk is something that Woodgrove, as we mentioned, had struggled with because it was paper-based and quite difficult. But in this case, they're using a form completion requirement where the central office's employees can simply use Microsoft Forms and use all the powers of Microsoft Forms, including the different question types, conditional logic, and the ability to require a file upload, such as a photo of the frontline employee's work. Once they've got all of the questions that they need in the form and complete that task, they can publish it out to the frontline worker. And you can see here on the right what that looks like. That individual receiving that task can open that form directly from Planner without leaving the app, and can answer all the questions here and get that information to the central offices of that organization. Next, we'll take a look at another capability in Frontline Tasks. Sometimes it's important to send a training or policy task that, instead of needing to be done once per team, like that store audit, needs to be completed by each team member. And by creating a new list for each team member, you can create tasks like training tasks, and you can attach a video, such as a training video. And this will help you get that training exercise out to all of the individuals in that team. And as you can see on the right, you can once again open that video without leaving the Planner app, so that there's no context switching or getting lost in the tools or technology. That task can be completed then and there, and your training rates and completion rates can be increased through making that easier for your employee workforce. Another feature that we have as part of task publishing is the ability to send task lists on a recurring basis. As you can see here, you have a choice as to the cadence of when that task list should be sent. And once you've defined that and created the right set of tasks, you can publish that and it will send automatically at that cadence for the rest of the duration of that task list. For any list, once you've completed the tasks and they're ready to go, you can choose which location to publish to. You have the ability to select from a hierarchy, which we'll see in a moment, or the ability to upload a custom list of locations. As you can see here in the hierarchy, you can configure branches and filters that match the needs of your organization, and you can choose using a combination of the two. In this case, the pilot stores in North America and Europe. Once you've selected the right location, you can confirm that everything looks good. You can double check who you would like to receive notifications in their team's activity feed, and then confirm that everything looks good and click publish to send that off. Once the list is published, folks in central offices have the ability to see a simple report for any published list. And so you can see here that they have the ability to see for each task which percentage of store locations have assigned that task and which percentage have completed it. They can also go into a specific task as we see here and see for each location have they assigned and completed that specific task. Finally, you can see for the list as a whole by location what percentage of tasks have been assigned or completed and jump into a specific location to see the status of each task at that specific location. In addition to that, we also see, as I mentioned before, organizations using our extensibility to retrieve the task details and build their own custom reports in Power BI. This allows organizations to match what the organization evaluates for success and the communications that are sent out to frontline locations for monitoring the health of their stores. Plus, once you have retrieved that data and placed it in a table or other data aggregation location, you can use that information for integrations with AI. In this case, the user is using that same table to ask for which locations have overdue tasks, and the AI agent or assistant is quickly surveying that data and responding, here are the two locations that have overdue tasks. And you can imagine an experience where it also helps you reach out to those locations to ask if everything is okay or if they need some additional support. That is an overview of the task publishing experience, which is available as part of the Planner app in Microsoft Teams. And if you would like to learn more, you can go to aka.ms/task publishing. I mentioned as part of that experience, there is the task extensibility capabilities supported by Planner. And I'll touch a little bit more on that, those capabilities and the reporting that we saw. There is a range of APIs available as part of Planner, as I mentioned. And one of the most common use cases is for retrieving task data. But there are also capabilities to create tasks as well and to manage tasks. And so there are different use cases that we see organizations pursuing. Uh, I will share another look at the reporting experience that we looked at a moment ago. And I'll draw attention to the additional details that we didn't discuss the first time. You can see in this screen, for example, that this particular organization in our sample, Woodgrove, has decided to take the task properties, and in particular, one of the key metrics in their organization is, was this task not just completed, but was it completed on time? Or was it completed late? And similarly, they might also be interested in pulling information on who completed those tasks. And do they have a broad distribution of completion, or is it just frontline managers completing those tasks? These are all details that are possible to pull with the Planner APIs, and you can retrieve that information programmatically in order to create the right custom reports and potentially additional automation on top of that data once you've retrieved the data that's important for you. And so if you are interested in learning more about these capabilities, you can learn more about task publishing at aka.ms/task publishing, as I mentioned earlier. And you can learn more about our API capabilities at aka.ms/planner API. And with that, we will turn our attention over to the shifts experience.
Thank you, Andrew. Hello, everyone. I'm Navjot Marwaha. I am the product manager for the Shifts app and excited to talk to you about how Woodgrove, that already has a large establishment with schedule management using leveraging UKG, as well as recently acquired 200 stores that are using pen and paper process, how they can leverage capabilities within teams to improve their scheduling. So what is Shifts? Shifts is a scheduling management tool built right within Microsoft Teams that helps you create, update, and manage schedules for your organization. It's built ground up as an end-to-end solution that provides frontline managers the ability to create digitally these schedules and share them via mobile phones, primarily via mobile phones, to their frontline workers. The benefit that the frontline managers get is that they get one simple view of their schedule for their location. And we'll go through several other capabilities in the app as well. But our primary goal is to reduce the overhead for the frontline work manager and not only give visibility to the frontline workers as to when they need to be and where they need to work, but also get control of some of their scheduling. Yeah. So diving into the product itself, as we build the product, we have three core principles or strategic advantages that we keep in mind to deliver to our customers. The first and foremost is the self-service for the FLWs. The frontline workers are already juggling multiple priorities within their lives, and one less thing they want to do is also be inundated with or overwhelmed with constantly changing shifts. So not only do we want to provide them the visibility into how their schedules are being updated, but also provide them some power to communicate to their frontline manager as to when they're available to work and potentially do some of those shift schedule transactions on their own with the frontline manager simply having the visibility or when needed approving those transactions. We'll see all those features in more detail in a bit. The second big area of focus for us is frontline manager productivity. As we talk to our customers, especially those who are maybe on a pen and paper or an Excel process for managing schedules, they tell us that scheduling could take up to 20 or even 30% of their time in any given week. And why is that? Because it seems surprising because it's like once every 2 weeks or once every 3 weeks process. What becomes more cumbersome for the frontline manager to deal with are the day-to-day changes. Andrew talked about tasks publishing. Perhaps you got a new set of tasks suddenly from your headquarters that requires you to staff up for the next few days that you hadn't planned for. Or potentially some of your frontline workers fell sick or their car broke down and they can't come to work. So you need to immediately find someone new to take place for them. All of this takes time and effort, and we try to automate that as much as possible with the Shifts app. And lastly, Shifts is in Teams. Teams is ultimately a collaboration and workflow tool for your frontline workforce. Knowing who is working when and where is super critical to automating some of your other capabilities, improving communications, sending people, if you're using, for example, phones and call queues, sending those calls to the right person or assigning tasks to the right person. So again, let's look at each of these capabilities once in one at a time. And by the way, feel free to continue to ask questions in the Q&A section. I will start asking them after I'm done with this presentation. So let's look at self-serve. We'll start with OpenShift capabilities. Now, what is OpenShift? An OpenShift is a shift that a frontline manager creates without assigning it to someone. And this is broadcasted to all the frontline workers who are able to take that shift on so that they can opt in and fill that shift. So let's see that end-to-end experience, how that works. On the left-hand side is the view for a frontline manager. This is their schedule for that week. And they realized that for whatever reason, they needed to have one more person in the store the next day. So they've created an open shift. And as soon as they create one, depending on the notification preferences for the frontline workers, they may get a notification. On the left-hand side, this frontline worker had a notification, they clicked on it, and they're able to view that particular shift and request it right from there. On the other hand, the frontline worker on the right-hand side, they prefer to just go check shifts when they are ready, as opposed to getting notification. So when they were back on the phone, they launched the Shifts app, looked at all the open shifts, saw this particular one met their schedule, so they had applied for that as well. As soon as frontline workers are applying, or as they're applying, the frontline manager starts getting requests for them. And of course, here they see two frontline workers have requested the shift. They're also able to see that for one of them, it may create some kind of a conflict. So they're able to approve the right person. So without much headache, the frontline manager is able to fill that shift without having to go, call every individual frontline worker. And also frontline workers themselves have the power. They have the preference on which particular open shift to take on to fill their additional hours as well. Yeah. Now that's one scenario that happens frequently. Another scenario that happens frequently is shifts are already assigned, everyone's good, but suddenly some life event happens. One of the frontline workers, perhaps their kid gets sick, and they're not able to make it to work. In this case, what traditionally would have happened is they would call their manager either through shadow IT or their personal phone, let them know of this. Now the manager has to go search for someone else to pick up that shift. Instead, what we have is swap shift. In this case, let me play this video. In this case, the frontline workers initiate the swap. So in this case, the frontline worker on the right-hand side, they have a shift that they're not able to make. They have an option to swap the shift. And they can right from within their mobile phone, browse for other shifts that they can swap with their colleagues. As soon as they find a shift that works for their schedule, they're able to initiate that request. They have the option of adding additional information so that their colleagues have the information necessary for them to process the swap shift. Now, in this case, they've tried to swap with the person on the left. Frontline managers still not getting engaged because these guys are still having conversation. Over here, the other frontline worker says, yes, happy to help. I'm able to help here. They add that comment so that their manager knows, again, that they're both good with the swap. And ultimately, the swap needs to be approved by the manager because they want to make sure that the appropriate shifts are covered by people who have the right skills. So they're able to see who initiated the swap, who's taking it on, any notes that they may have added, and then approve that particular swap request. And again, the advantage is that as soon as that is done, everybody's rosters are updated in real time on the desktop for the frontline manager, as well as for the mobile phone for the frontline workers. And getting the notifications for them as well if their particular roster changed. In addition to that, they also on the mobile phone have the ability to go through all their historic requests and see and track whether they were approved or declined with the reasons for approvals and declines as well. So these are just a couple of scenarios. We have another option called offer shift, where it's just a one-way transfer of shift from one person to another. But open shifts, swap shifts, offer shifts, these are ways in which you are smoothing out these day-to-day transactions and day-to-day ups and downs on scheduling that need to take place. In addition to doing all these transactions, it's also critical for frontline manager as they're creating the roster to take into account the availability preferences of the frontline worker. So now on team shifts, the frontline worker can go in and set their availability on a recurring basis. Let's say every Friday evening, they have a soccer practice for their kid. They may then mark that on Fridays, they are not available from this time to this time, or rather they're only available from this time to this time. Or they can go into specific dates. Let's say they have a vacation coming up and they have 3 or 4 days they don't want to work. They can mark themselves unavailable. Now, what this is a preference that they're indicating to the frontline manager. For that person, they have the availability information right there as they're scheduling, so that when they're creating shifts, they can take into account these availability preferences. Of course, when business requires it, FLMs or frontline managers can override those availability settings, obviously communicating with the frontline worker and making sure that they have the right coverage, but at the same time, as much as possible, meeting the availability preferences of the frontline worker. In addition to that, the last thing you want to track is time offs. Every organization has a different set of reasons they want to track time offs for. So we give options for the frontline managers within the settings page to create as many categories as they wish to track. Once they've created the categories and enabled this in shifts, frontline workers from their mobile phone or their desktop can request time off, assign that to a particular category. And once approved, the time offs also show up on the roster for not just the frontline worker, but the whole team to see. Now, a couple of callouts here. Some organizations think of time off as private or sensitive information. So within the settings page, frontline managers have the ability where they can toggle how much information about these time offs are available for the whole team to see. Again, respecting then the privacy needs of their own teams. And lastly, whenever you think about time offs always come with quotas or balances. So coming soon, and we'll talk about this later in the deck or in the presentation. We're adding the ability to track balances of time offs as you request kind of additional time off, etc. So moving on, now looking at the FLM productivity, what are the tasks they're doing and how can we improve their day-to-day operations? The first thing they worry about is payroll processing. Are all the frontline workers getting paid for the amount of time that they worked? Some of these things may be manual in nature. So with clock in, clock out in Teams, the frontline workers can use their mobile phone to not just clock in and clock out, but also track their breaks. They're able to confirm their timestamps and edit them once if need be. And then whenever the payroll processing needs to happen, the frontline manager can go and export the timesheets where they get a very detailed view of for every employee in the store, exactly what time they clocked in, what time they clocked out, what was the shift time, how much was the how much time did they spend in overtime, and so on and so forth. Additionally, because sometimes punches can be wrong, there are a couple of ways that we are allowing for folks to address these inaccuracies. First, because this is a mobile-based punch, frontline managers have the option of also geotagging their location. So this way, whenever a frontline worker is clocking in or clocking out, in their timesheet export, frontline manager can also see whether they were within the 200-meter radius of that geolocation, meaning whether they were on location or not as they were clocking in and clocking out. Additionally, sometimes frontline workers may forget to clock in or clock out on time. So they can always go back within their mobile phone, check their previous punch and edit it. And all these initial original ones and edited time clock, all of that audit trail is available for the frontline manager to see as they are processing this particular, all these punches for payroll processing. And I feel the real power of productivity tools for shifts comes in when frontline managers feel empowered to now add or extend these capabilities using all of the platform capabilities on Teams. So these are some real examples on how various frontline managers have extended the Shifts app and created even more space for themselves to focus on what really matters, which is serving their customers. The first example is from a large US retailer. They're using Shifts to schedule about 3,000 call center employees. And the frontline manager, who's not an IT person, they used Power Automate along with Shifts to fully automate time off requests. So as frontline workers would request time off, instead of the manager reviewing their approval request, they had Power Automate kick in. They would make a few checks, depending on the availability of the balance, depending on the nature, like some certain other criteria that they deemed fit and coded in their Power Automate. The request would be auto-approved or auto-declined. And in case these requests was auto-approved, and if the person had a shift assigned to them, that shift would automatically transition or convert into an open shift. So that if they were scheduled to work, automatically the workflow has kicked off to find a replacement for them on that day. So all of this work was completed by the frontline manager themselves, again, freeing up minutes and even hours of their time every week. The second is around OpenShift, and we see a lot of extension around OpenShifts. OpenShifts is a key way for frontline managers to be able to find resources when they need them. So in this case, a large retailer in the ANZ region or the Australia region, they actually wanted to have OpenShifts. They wanted to give OpenShifts preference to only those employees, to a certain set of tier 1 employees before it went to everyone else. So they disabled notifications on shifts and instead created their own bot that would send any open shift to their preferred list of employees first. And since it's an adaptive card, the status of that request would update as the shift got filled. So this way they were able to create cascading invitations for their open shift. Now, another example on a Canadian public sector, this is the flip side of it. They did not want to cascade and limit it to a few folks. They actually want to broadcast it to everyone in the region. So this is a Canadian public sector organization that has multiple recreation centers. And when they had an open shift, let's say for a life, a yoga instructor or a lifeguard in particular location, they gave the option for the frontline manager to also broadcast it to everyone in the location through, again, a bot. So every time an open shift got created, details of the shift along with the manager who needed that help got posted. That way, even if I don't work on that recreation center on a day-to-day basis, I have the visibility into it and the optionality to go fill that schedule if need be. Right? So these are just a few examples. And how are these being enabled? We have a couple of ways. Power Platform, which is a low-code way to extend this. You can go to your Power Platform portal itself, and there are several templates available to automate these shifts. Or, most convenient, you can just go to the App Store, Workflows, and there's a section for shifts. And we give several starter templates. But of course, this is low-code automation, so you can get inspired with these templates, but build your own. In addition to that, we have a very rich set of APIs. Almost anything that you can do in the UX, you can do with an API. One-on-one transactions, bulk modes, to the extent that many customers have connected their WFM systems with shifts, and I'll speak to that also in a bit. But we have both one-way and two-way with webhooks, so they can do full integration and extension of the Shifts app. Now let's look at the third pillar, which is ultimately on Teams. What you're doing is collaboration and enabling some of the other workflows. Frontline workforce, like as opposed to information workers, where I kind of know Andrew works on tasks, and whenever I have a question for task, I need to reach out to Andrew, and he works every day from 8 to 5. That doesn't happen in frontline workforce, right? Your rotas are changing constantly. You have no idea who on that particular day, who's working on that shift for that particular duration. So typically this would mean go back, check the rotas, figure out who to reach out to. Since Shifts is available in Teams, we have several capabilities that we are now enabling automation. First and foremost, channel conversations. We have Shifts powered tags, where if you want to send a notification to, let's say, cashiers, and cashiers is one of your scheduling groups in Shifts, just tag at cashiers, and we will do the hard job of figuring out who is currently clocked in as cashiers and only notify those so that you can focus on what communication you need to send them and what work needs to get done, and not necessarily who to send it to. Second is call queue integration. This is something we're very excited about. It's coming soon. I have a slide here that'll talk about it in more detail. But call queues are essentially round robin call setup where, let's say, people from outside the store, these could be internal folks or your customers, could call in, and this call needs to be routed to the right person. Now, again, you want to know who's particularly on shift that day, and we have integration between shifts and call queues that I'll speak to in a bit. And lastly, Andrew talked about tasks being assigned. You may be using tasks for assignments. You may be using some Dynamics 365 for task assignment or your own tooling. Using those APIs, again, this is an example of a retailer in the US region. One of the scenarios was every Monday morning, within 1 hour of the store opening, they needed a store walkthrough complete. Now they have hundreds of stores. Every store has a different person opening the store. And more importantly, different stores had different opening times. So they couldn't just schedule it to be done by 9 a.m. Because it depended on what time the store opened. So instead, they anchored the task to be assigned to whoever clocked in first to a certain scheduling group. This way, enabling the flexibility and automation in making sure the task was assigned to the right person at the right time and was done within the reasonable expectations. Okay. So now we'll talk about some of the things that we're excited about releasing soon. All these features are coming in the next few months. First, starting with call queue. So if you're already familiar with call queue or user call queue, you would know that you can assign a team or individuals. But if you do that, those individuals have to remember to assign themselves to the particular call queue once they've clocked in. If you want to automate that, now you have the option of just adding a scheduling group. So you can just attach the call queue to a schedule in shifts. And as people clock in and clock out, they automatically keep getting added to this call queue and keep getting clocked out of this call queue as well. The second one, I showed you several examples of open shifts and how customers were extending it and enabling it across locations. We were inspired by the stories, and now coming soon, we are extending shifts so that frontline managers from right within shifts can start publishing shifts when they want to other locations as well. So this allows the frontline managers to reach to a wider labor pool for those last minute changes. And it also gives frontline workers access to more open shifts to fill their hours. So for the frontline worker and Shifts app, of course, they can go to their primary location and look at all the open shifts. But now they have the option of going to the other locations. There are several locations around them that they may be available for them to work at, and then they can view those open shifts and apply to these open shifts as well. And lastly, remember I talked about time off and time off balance tracking. This again coming soon. In addition to enabling each category, the frontline manager from within the settings page can enable time off tracking as well. Once they enable time off tracking, they can set these balances within the Shifts app for each of the category individually. What that does is as the FLW, a frontline worker, is applying for the time off, they can see their available balance. They can request specific amount of balance and know exactly how much that will reduce their hours as they make the request. Once they make the request and FLMs or frontline managers are approving those, they have all that information as well, and that they can take into consideration before approving those time of requests. Again, taking one more workflow that they were potentially doing manually outside in Excel, tracking times for their individuals, automating all that process and enabling a digital solution for that in Shifts. Lastly, remember, while this was a good solution for the 200 stores that they recently acquired in Woodgrove that were using pen and paper process, inspired by some of these capabilities, some of the stores that were using UKG were interested as well. We do see several customers who have a WFM system still use Shifts for their frontline workers. And there are multiple reasons for it. First, many of these WFM systems are optimized primarily for the frontline manager. The frontline manager may be going there to create schedules, maybe mostly to meet some of their internal rota rules, etc. But they end up printing those out or taking screenshots and sharing it via chat with everyone, which means static schedules, overhead, and outdated schedules in individuals' phones as well. So integrating workforce management system with team shifts allows this real-time update and end user experience for the frontline worker to see their shifts in their Teams app. Now, one additional thing I'll say here, and that I think ties to the simplified IT management as well, is even if the WFM system may have an end user app, that end user app is being used for only one thing, shifts. If you already have Teams available for your frontline workers, then consolidating that experience on to Teams allows IT management to have less of app sprawl. That is not only helps them on security stance, but one less thing for them to manage. But more importantly, if in the back end you're upgrading your systems, WFM system from let's say one system to the system, or I see it very commonly, many organizations have multiple versions of WFM systems in their organizations. At least you can consolidate the experience for the vast amount of frontline workers so that they can be trained once on shifts. So even if they're shifting from one WFM system to the other WFM system in the back end, you don't have to retrain all of your workforce. And of course, lastly, given all the intelligent workflow automation and collaboration automation we saw with, let's say, shifts-based tagging, call queue integration, you get to take advantage of all that as well. Multiple ways to get that information into shifts. The most convenient way is the frontline manager can simply import the schedule in Excel. So they can export from Excel in the WFM system and import it here. That gives them the ability for FLWs to self-serve shifts, start swapping, create open shifts. FLMs can start automating their day-to-day actions using Power Automate. And then you can deliver all those collab and workflow automation solutions that I showed you earlier. Of course, the FLM has to, now work on two WM systems because they have to manually upload this thing. So that's not fully automated. If you want to do that, that's the next section, which is you go down the API route and do one-way integration. So as soon as a shift is created in WFM via API, it's pushed into shifts. Now the FLMs don't have to bother about updating shifts as well. And lastly, the last thing that won't do is because it's a one-way connection, there may be some rules in your WFM systems that you want to check before you complete those transactions. For that, we provide a rich set of webhooks. So you can go all the way, do a two-way API connection. And now if let's say a frontline worker swaps a shift and we want to validate that that swap shift isn't, violating any of the rules, the two-way integration to the WFM system makes a real-time approval or decline of that swap shift as well. Right? So again, as a reminder, frontline worker self-serve, frontline manager productivity, and automation of workflow. These are the various capabilities that Woodgrove is starting to leverage. If you want to learn more about these, there's a bunch of resources. This would be difficult to track, but I'm sure we will share these with you after this session, and they'll be available online as well. So with that, I'm going to hand it back to Kensington to close us out.
All right, let me take control here. And okay, let me just bring this back all together, my friends. And if you want, please start raising your hand for our Q&A section. Just a reminder of the challenges that we had at Woodgrove that we are going through in this series together. Today, we focus mostly on the fact that we have store audits once a quarter, that everything is manual, and we had all these paper processes, no visibility, no understanding of kind of what was happening at the ground level, as well as a manual process for scheduling, time off requests, all of the lovely things that Navjot just went through was all manual and had to be done by paper, by phone call, by text message, etc. But now there's a fantastic way to do that all digitally and in the palm of your hand. And so this is what we've accomplished. We've transformed those digital and paper processes to allowing the digital tracking of those processes with clear expectations and clear standards enforced. We now have store audits that are so much easier to complete, and there's so much better visibility that we're able to do them more often. Again, helping us adhere to standards, maintain the kinds of experiences that we want with our customer base. And now we have a central source of the truth that everyone can access when it comes to, who needs to do what when and how to accomplish these certain goals. And when it comes to those 200 additional stores, as well as our existing store base, we now have the ability for those new stores to access shifts on teams, to digitalize their scheduling, and really give that peace of mind so people can request time off when their kid gets sick, and not have to go through a lot of rigmarole, as well as providing a foundation to perhaps bring the rest of the stores onto the shifts experience so we can have that single unified end user experience, regardless of the underlying workforce management solution being leveraged at any particular location. Guys, I think at this point I am going to wrap things up, and give everybody back a little bit of time. But before I let you all go, I wanted to remind you that this was our 4th session of a 6-part series. So that's number 4, checked right off and in the books. Yeah, I created my own checklist, Andrew. And on our next session is July 25th. Where we are going to go over turbocharging, not just doing, but turbocharging your employee home experience through customization. So not just the ability to do those out-of-the-box cards that we've been talking about, but go even farther than that. Some of the third-party integrations, line of business apps, and integration with Workday, perhaps. And other things you can do to personalize that user experience. Again, you can sign up at aka.ms/Frontline Fridays blog. and on our Frontline Fridays website, which you should be able to click here to go to, but we also have it in chat for you. And one last thing before you go, if you liked what you saw here, if you didn't like what you saw here, I hope you did, please go and scan this QR code and let us know. Select that Frontline Fridays series so that we know the feedback is about this series in particular. If there's a topic you'd like to see us cover that we didn't, there's an industry you'd like to see us cover that we didn't, please provide that feedback. We are eager to hear from you, and we look forward to seeing you in the next few sessions. Thank you again for your time, and have an absolutely fantastic day and a fantastic weekend.